What's up everyone, Arcandy here and welcome to part 2 of my wall clip tutorial series. The highlight of this tutorial will be the fast wall clip setups. These setups share the same mechanics, so I'll start by explaining those first. There are several turnaround animations, each with different skew frames and quirks. For the tornado method we use the standing turnaround. For the fast setups we will use other animations such as running, crouch, slide, or the ledge drop. The key point I want to make here is to always make sure that you use the correct animation for each setup, as other animations may produce different results. After skewing, we can still adjust the skew angle. You have to be facing backward to do so, and there are 3 adjustments you can make. 1. Free aim over the shoulder and release free aim. This rotates Samus 180 degrees. 2. Free aim over the shoulder, release free aim, and now quickly push the stick to the other side and repress free aim. This rotates Samus 360 degrees. 3. Do the same inputs as the second adjustment, but push the stick back a third time. This rotates 540 degrees. We have already used the first adjustment to switch skew sides for the tornado method. The second adjustment was an earlier version of the tornado, slower and riskier. Each turnaround adds to the skew angle even while skewed, and since you end up still facing backward, you can continue to adjust. The third adjustment happens when you try to repeat the second adjustment too soon. Aside from that, there are other, more limited adjustments you can make. For the sake of curiosity, Omega Cannon and Ceiling Magnets are 2 of the very few things in the game that let you turn around from forward to backward. You can add another skew angle on top of what you had by spin jumping in the middle of the adjustment turnaround. And I mean any of the 3 adjustments I just mentioned. You could even realign yourself with the 2D axis without resetting the skew. Some of the fast setups use this tech to chain multiple skews. Naturally, each skew in the chain is frame perfect, so the more chains, the harder the setup gets. Outside of fast setups, you can chain skew to try and back up when you fail to get the perfect skew for tornadoes. You could either land the correct frame, realign with the 2D axis and try again, or ultimately start over if you fail or get a wide angle. One way to get a perfect skew more reliably is to use pause buffers. Face left and tap your stick to the right and pause. You can choose to pause with either plus or minus. If you don't see Samus turn, unpause and try again. If you see Samus turn to frame 1 before the pause screen comes up, you'll get frame 2 when you unpause. Now unpause and press B. It's important to note you cannot unpause and B at the same time. To be successful, you need to unpause first and press B in very quick succession so you can jump immediately after unpausing. Also, you must unpause with the same input you used to pause. However, doing pause buffers increases your chances of getting the Hobbit Skew, which I mentioned briefly in part 1. So I recommend getting used to the skew timing rather than use pause buffers. We'll get back to Hobbit Skews later. I will cover 7 fast setups, each with their uses and limitations, and some easier than others. Let me note that since the release of part 1, 2 new setups have been found that both obsolete and enhance the tornado method, and we'll start precisely with those 2 new setups. The free DLC setup found by DLC, the master of wall clip setups, obsoletes tornadoes on left side clips. Compared to tornadoes, it practically looks like no setup is even necessary. Start by unskewing to the right. You can unskew, for example, with Morph Ball or aim over the shoulder melee. Now, crouch and get a backward perfect skew. For the crouch animation, this is frame 3, not 2. Lean on the door, move towards the right and let Samus slide for a moment. Hold free aim to get up, adjust to face forward, and now do about 7 dash melees away from the wall. When you let the animation play out, you get a little bit more distance than if you cancel early into another dash melee. Whatever you choose to do, be consistent. Unskew with melee, turn around, do a standing melee to buffer grapple and go through. This setup can be used almost anywhere on both hard and soft collisions, though there are a few specific layouts where it does not work. For hard collision, you would instead build a shine spark and spark through. Turns out the dash melees push you a short distance even without a skew angle. Facing forward pushes you left, facing backward pushes you right. Sadly, this setup does not work when mirrored to the right because we cannot turn around from forward to backward. Mini Tornado, also found by DLC and the successor to the tornado method. It works on clips for both sides, but of course the previous setup is better for left side clips. Do about 16 crouch turnarounds. It might seem hard at first, but there's an easy way to do it. Make sure Samus is standing. Push the stick down to crouch and hold it there. Now rotate the stick between left and right while keeping it down. Do not raise it. This lets you do crouch turnarounds both without standing up and without morphing easily. Once you got the turnarounds, get a backward perfect skew. Left standing or right crouch will do. Run about 12 steps in the direction opposite to the door. Once you've done that, do about 6 dash melees, always holding the stick in that direction. With more turnarounds, you can take less steps before the melees, try it out, and see for yourself what feels best. Now unskew, buffer grapple, and go through. The crouch turnarounds at a clockwise angle, so the skew will have the same direction that the dash melee will push you. Standing turnarounds at a counterclockwise angle and undo your progress, so avoid them. The dash melees will only work after you've flipped a little bit, which is what we do with the initial steps. And if you don't get a perfect skew, at least you don't have to do nearly as many turnarounds as before. Hobbit Skew, the random skew I mentioned before and jokingly named after Hobbit for his unlucky skews, is the easiest and fastest clip method, with a catch. The best way to get a Hobbit Skew is to pause buffer a backward perfect skew and hope that you get it. There are pause buffer variations with better success rate than what I showed before. Pause before you input the turnaround and then do frame by frame advance with pause buffers until you see frame 1, then unpause and press B. You can advance by pressing B and repausing, or alternating between the two pause menus using plus and minus. This is difficult and timing based. It's okay if you end up skipping frames, but still get the perfect skew. Do your best to learn how to time pause buffers and figure out what works best for you. Now, to actually clip with it, the more consistent way is to build speed, half jump, hold down, and store right next to the wall. Then do 3 dash melees away from the wall and shine spark through. For 2 tiles, do the same, but take a few steps after the 3rd melee before sparking. You could clip by just speed boosting, but most of the times you stop on the wall with a skew this big. This skew works on hard collisions and flippers, but not on most soft collisions like doors. The biggest downside is that it is ultimately caused by lag, so there is no 100% consistent setup. It's more likely to get this in laggy rooms. The angle you get can have some variation, but is usually consistent per room. Usually your skew goes to the right, rarely to the left, which is why I recommend the backward perfect skew so you can adjust if needed. Grapple Skew is the most reliable and powerful skew method. It lets you get door clips and wall clips with the snap of a finger. Basically, when you grapple into a ceiling magnet, flat or diagonal, it adds a skew angle, easiest to do when you already have a perfect skew. Distance to the magnet, what direction you aim, jumping, and whether you grab the magnet all factor into how wide the skew you get. Being closer to the magnet gives you a wider skew, jumping also increases the skew, grabbing the magnet can give you tilt if you're close enough. The direction in which you aim also matters, typically aiming around 45 degrees in the same direction as your skew is most reliable. You can either go all the way up to the magnet for a large angle at once, or, since this method stacks, tap multiple times with grapple to build up a small angle each time. If we put all these pieces together, we can come up with fast setups that fit different magnet layouts and distances. Done right, this clips even doors very fast. The only downside to this method is that you can only use it where there are ceiling magnets, so it won't be readily available everywhere. Zas figured out a setup to clip left side walls using ledges. This trick can mostly be replaced by the 3DLC method, however it is still competitive in speed or preference and may be usable in places where that setup cannot be used. Drop from a right side ledge by pressing down and then press B on frame 5. Frame 5 is not quite facing right. Then you want to Skew Chain to face forward, that would be frame 5. The Zas setup has a smaller angle than a Hobbit Skew, 4 dash melees to clip single tile walls, but 2 tile walls aren't really feasible with the melees method. Although this setup has mostly been used for some unique early game clips, which we'll see in detail in part 3. DLC once again came up with a method to get a fast right side wall clip by chaining 3 skews together. First, we do a running turnaround skew on frame 2. This puts Samus facing backward but slightly to the left. From here, we chain into frame 3, where Samus is still facing backward almost at 45 degrees. Lastly, we try to chain to face forward, which is frame 6. This skew is slightly smaller than Hobbit, but still larger than Zas. Clip single tile walls with 4 dash melees, and 2 tiles with a few extra steps. There are 2 other variations of the DLC chain. You can replace the first chain with either a right crouch turnaround frame 4 or with a ledge drop turnaround frame 2. The second skew in the chain is arguably the most difficult one to get. It's actually the earliest frame you can get skewed into. If you try to skew on the frames before that, you will instantly flip 180 degrees, so you have to master that timing very well to be consistent with this setup. Dioptas found that the turnaround animations underwater are paced slightly different when you don't have the gravity suit. As it happens, the standing turnaround gives you a fast clip angle instead of what would be the usual perfect skew out of the water. Problem is, we're not able to carry it out of the water normally due to the limited jump height. We need a shine spark for this. So prepare a shine spark before you come into the water. Then try to get the perfect skew and spark out. Now you're ready to actually clip, and that is similar to the Hobbit Skew. Skew backward if you want to clip to the left, skew forward if you want to clip to the right. Be careful not to do a landing turnaround instead of a standing turnaround, as that will give you a skew too wide to clip. Unskew with morph ball and let the ball land before you unmorph to try to skew again. Make the most of your attempts before the shine spark expires, or you'll have to start over. And that concludes part 2. With all these different setups, you can now clip into walls and doors fast, just about anywhere. In part 3, we'll take the tech learned here and go over real wall clips used in the more contested unrestricted speedrun categories. Thanks for watching, and see you in part 3.